gunman has been arrested after shooting Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan at a rally in the Punjab province.
Tensions are high in the Pacific as North Korea is suspected of firing an intercontinental ballistic missile. This comes a day after North and South exchanged missile tests.
The Bank of England raises interest rates to 3%, the largest increase in 3 decades, as inflation led by higher food and energy prices remains high.
Russia performs an abrupt U-turn, rejoining a UN brokered deal to allow the safe shipment of Ukrainian grain through the Black Sea.
At a summit in Berlin, the German Chancellor calls on nations in the Western Balkans to overcome their conflicts for the sake of regional stability.
Pakistan's former Prime Minister Imran Khan and 9 others have been wounded after a gunman shot at the lorry they were travelling in. The apparent assassination attempt was carried out as Khan led a rally in Wazirabad in the province of Punjab. He sustained injuries to his leg and was rushed to hospital, and his condition is not believed to be serious, although the condition of the other victims is unknown. The suspected gunman, who was arrested at the scene, told reporters that his intention was to kill Khan because of statements he had made at an earlier rally in Lahore. Khan was travelling from Lahore to Islamabad with a convoy calling for a snap election, with little to no security presence.
Tensions are high in the Pacific after North Korea fired 3 missiles towards Japan, including a suspected intercontinental ballistic missile. While it was established that one fell into the sea without crossing into Japanese waters, it did trigger air raid sirens. This comes a day after the North fired over 20 missiles at the South, sparking Seoul's anger and retaliation.
North Korea's continuous ballistic missile launches are acts of serious provocation that threaten the security and stability of not only the Korean peninsula, but also the world. It is also a clear violation of a UN Security Council resolution.
Despite reports the ICBM launch may have failed, the missile firings are seen as an escalation, worrying an already tense Japan.
Missile launches are outrageous and totally unacceptable. I instructed officials to determine any damage and to properly provide the Japanese public with information.
The 20 missiles fired the day before by Pyongyang mark the most launches in a single day ever by the country. The latest tests come as the US and South Korea run joint military exercises in the area.
The Ethiopian government and rebels from the northern Tigray province have agreed to a permanent cessation of hostilities. No one knows how many have died, but over 2 years of brutal war, the number is thought to be in the hundreds of thousands. It also unleashed a major humanitarian crisis.
As far as both parts are concerned, we have made painful concessions because addressing the pains of our people is far more important than the kinds of concessions we have made.
The war began in late 2020 after government forces invaded the region, accusing Tigrayan forces of rebellion. The African Union has welcomed the news as a new dawn, but the full text of the peace deal hasn't been released, with former Kenyan President Uhuru Kenyatta warning that the devil will be in the detail. For now, there are hopes that food aid can be resumed. According to the World Health Organization, 90% of people in the region need humanitarian assistance. The Bank of England has announced its biggest interest rate increase in 3 decades in an effort to tackle persistently high inflation. The UK Central Bank boosted its key rate by 0.75 percentage point to 3%. This is after price increases returned to a 40-year high in September. The hike is expected to dampen economic activity and lead to falling inflation next year. But the bank painted a grim picture of what's to come, predicting a 2-year recession across the country, which would be the longest economic downturn in more than half a century. Countries around the world are struggling to contain inflation, driven by higher energy and food costs due to the war in Ukraine. Like the Bank of England, many other central banks are aggressively raising interest rates in the hope that rising prices don't become entrenched.
A comforting sight. Ships loaded with Ukrainian wheat and sunflower oil were seen crossing the Bosphorus within hours of Russia saying it will rejoin the UN brokered grain deal. Moscow's climb down came after high-level diplomatic talks between Turkey, one of the guarantors of the scheme. Its president announced there had been a breakthrough after a phone call between the Turkish and Russian defense ministers. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky was quick to thank Recep Tayyip Erdogan for his efforts. In his nightly address, he said the return of the deal was important to the whole world and that there was one threat to global food security, the Russian Federation. President Vladimir Putin says he received sufficient guarantees from Kyiv that a maritime corridor would be demilitarized so he could rejoin the agreement. Moscow's withdrawal had reignited fears over global hunger. The reaction followed what it called a drone-targeted terrorist attack on its Black Sea fleet in Russian-annexed Crimea.
The White House has admitted to becoming increasingly concerned about a potential Russian nuclear strike in Ukraine. U.S. intelligence sources claim Russian military leaders have discussed how and when they might use nuclear weapons on the battlefield. A statement released by Russia's Foreign Affairs Ministry on prevention of nuclear war said Russia would be justified to hypothetically resort to nuclear weapons exclusively in response to an aggression involving the use of weapons of mass destruction when the very existence of the state is in jeopardy. The White House's National Security Council spokesperson John Kirby says such talk is irresponsible.
We still have not seen any indication that the Russians are making preparations for such use, but this is all deeply concerning to us, and it would be as irresponsible as it is for Putin to talk the way he is. It would be equally irresponsible for us not to take that and any other indicator that we're watching seriously.
As Russia's losses on the battlefield have mounted, its nuclear threats appear to have increased. But Moscow is accusing the West of deliberately pumping up the topic.
Germany is urging leaders of the Western Balkans to overcome internal conflicts in the interests of stability in the region and the shared goal of joining the European Union. The conference in Berlin is aimed at furthering the ambitions of Serbia, Kosovo, Bosnia, Montenegro, North Macedonia and Albania to join the bloc.
The citizens of the Western Balkans can count on Germany, and they can count on this process, the Berlin process, to continue supporting them. Only together can we work towards a more sovereign European Union. Only together can we protect European values and the rule of law. And only together we will overcome the huge challenges facing our continent and the world.
The countries are expected to sign agreements on easing regional travel arrangements and mutual recognition of academic qualifications, but there are deep divisions between some, particularly Serbia and Kosovo, that need resolving before EU membership can happen.
Protests in Iran continue, with activists calling for more rallies and civil disobedience. The latest images show protesters chanting "Down with the dictator" in the predominantly Kurdish city of Sanandaj. Iran is coming under increased criticism for its handling of the unrest, something which its ambassador at the UN has dismissed.
The rights of freedom of expression and peaceful assembly are recognized by Iranian constitution. Moreover, the enjoyment of these rights by the Iranian people has always been supported by the government.
The protests, now in their 6th week, were sparked by the death of Mahsa Amini, a young woman in police custody, accused of not covering her hair properly. Since then, more than 1,000 people have been charged in connection with the anti-government protests, and security forces are accused of having killed over 280 people, including 45 children. Parkland school shooter Nicholas Cruz has been formally sentenced to life in prison without parole. A jury last month voted for the defendant to be spared the death penalty, a decision which outraged relatives of the victims. In 2018, Cruz opened fire in Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida, killing 17 people and wounding 17 more.